All right, everybody, welcome to episode 59 of the Fantasy Timeline, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network. I'm Josh at Real Fantasy TL. I'm with my main man, Bill at Super Duperflex. Bill, how you doing, man?
Oh, doing good. Excited for the championship week and football all weekend and Christmas. And yeah, then I'll be sad for a little bit and then it'll be the off season. Yay.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is kind of like this is the most wonderful time of the year, as they say. You know, we get Christmas football, then we get day after Christmas football, then we get some regular Sunday football. I mean, it's pretty awesome. Plus, you know, battling for championships, trying to maybe sell off some older assets in leagues that we still have a trade deadline, and trying to help those champions win while maximizing our own assets. So, yeah, man, it's a good deal. It's great. And then, like you said, you know, we go through the playoffs. There's not really much going on. Super Bowl comes, and then boom, we're right back at it. You know, we're trying to make trades if we can. We're looking at startups. We're doing all that kind of fun stuff. So it's the best thing about Dynasty. It kind of never ends, which I mean, all of us degenerates love that. So, all right. So talking about degenerates and maybe some of the guys that got us into the championship game or maybe kept us out of the championship game. Let's go to the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I'll start off. I'll go with my good. Tony Pollard, 18 touches, 132 total yards, 2 touchdowns. And there's a lot of people that slipped Tony Pollard either into maybe a running back two or a flex spot last minute when they heard Zeke was going to be out for the game. And Tony Pollard probably led a lot of people to a championship. I know in the one league that I'm still fighting for the championship, Tony Pollard, I think, was my highest scoring player. So that was a good feeling knowing that a guy that I really haven't used much throughout the year comes in the clutch and has delivered me into a championship game. All right, Bill. So who's your good?
My good was Darren Waller. He is, I mean, the second half of the season, he's been pretty impressive. And he had 9 catches, 150 yards, and a touchdown. A lot of the tight ends, you know, kind of faded away a little bit. There's really only a few tight ends that you kind of feel good about because you just don't know what you're going to get. And even guys that you think you do, you don't. And that kind of leads into my bad, which, if you don't mind, I will just roll into that.
Roll right into the bad, man.
Yeah, so the bad is Hockenson. I mean, he was like the number 3 or number 4 tight end in points entering last week, and then he gets you a solid, 1.8 points because he had 2 catches, 18 yards, and a fumble. So, I mean, for a guy that's at the top of the list, or at least in the top, let's say 6 tight ends, to go from either getting 30 points from Waller or getting, let's say 2 points from Hockenson, I mean, that's a huge variance and could be completely what sends you to the championship game or not.
So, yeah, while you were talking about that, a thought popped into my head, so I want to run it by you and see what you think. Should Darren Waller be tight end 2 next year in startups, just for the fact that he seems to have that Travis Kelce type consistency? Not so much that he's going to score. I think Kelce's averaging like 26 points a game right now. But even if he's averaging 20 points a game for you, but he's out there each and every week, I mean, I think that's so super valuable at the tight end position, because even George Kittle, who is a monster, who's supremely talented, has had his issues with injuries. And then we get, things like Hawk going, 2 for 18, and we have our ups and downs with guys like Mark Andrews and the like. So, do you think if he just balls out the last 2 games and just keeps doing what he's been doing the last 3 or 4, that some people are going to contemplate taking him as the tight end too?
I think there might be some people, but I think that Kelce Kittle tier is just so like hyped that
Yeah.
I think Waller is always going to be a little discounted just because of his issues in the past and kind of that offense. And, if as these wide receivers mature, does that take away from Waller? And, Waller's still reasonably young for a tight end. So, he has that going for him. But then you have the young guys. Yeah, Hawkinson's inconsistent, but he's in his second year. So, those are things that people can at least argue, and he's like 6 years younger. So like there's all these like different things. It just depends on what people value. But for production, I think you have to put him up into that top, 3 or 4 at least at a bare minimum. So I'm probably still going for the Kelsey Kittle top 2 and then Waller. But Waller is a fantastic, like parting gift, or just if you don't get the top 2 guys, like I'm completely happy adding him because obviously he's a lot of people this year didn't like him just because they were worried he was a 1-year wonder, but he's proven it now, and that's a huge thing. And the injury thing with Kittle a little bit, yeah, that's a concern, but at the same time, all of these tight ends at some point in time are going to get dinged up. So if we see it again with Kittle this year, then I can start getting concerned, but I don't think I'm quite there in the injury concern yet. But long story short, yes, top 3, I think.
Yeah, and it's going to be real interesting to see what happens in startups because I think once you go Kittle, Kelsey, and Waller, I think you could throw a lot of different guys in that like 4 to 12 range, and you might be right, you might be wrong. So I think it'll be very interesting to see how high those 3 guys go because they are the closest to a sure thing as you can get at the tight end position. But let me throw my bet out there. Davante Adams, 7 receptions, 42 yards. Listen, Davante Adams, he's really good. Just a very weird game for the Packers where they didn't need a whole lot of offense to get a win, and Aaron Rodgers didn't have a ton of yards. No one else. I think Aaron Jones had a good game, but no one else really kind of balled out. But I know that there may be a few people who are not in their championship game because Davante Adams didn't give them the normal 20, 25, 30-point game that everyone has become used to. So I put him as my bad, and then I'll roll right into the ugly. Dwayne Haskins, trying his best to get COVID at a strip club. Listen, I don't understand it, and don't get me wrong. Listen, if your thing is going to gentlemen's establishments and watching the people that work there, hey, I support that, man. I've been in a few gentlemen's establishments myself, and I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. But knowing that you're going to be in the spotlight as the guy who was the starting quarterback and then wasn't, and then became the starting quarterback again, all eyes are going to be on you. And to be honest, just from personal experience, bachelor parties and the such, these young ladies will come to your house for a fee and do all the same things that they do at their workplace. So I don't understand why you felt the need to go in there and, not wear a mask. Yeah, there looks like James Harden may or may not have done the same thing. That's kind of up for debate right now. People are saying he did. He's saying he didn't. But just wear a mask. Even if you're at the gentleman's club, wear a mask. Listen, you don't want to catch anything at a gentleman's establishment. So just wear your mask and be okay. And it looks like I heard a report today that Dwayne Haskins got fined 60% of his game check, which ends up being roughly $40,000. But it looks like he's going to be able to play. So I'm assuming he's probably being tested more maybe than he had in the past just to make sure that he doesn't come positive for COVID. But Dwayne Haskins, he's trying his hardest to not have a job anymore. So good luck to them, I guess. What about you, Bill? What's your ugly?
So my ugly is the participants of one football game. And so it's actually both teams, and it is the LA Rams, who by winning would be in first place in their division and be in complete control of their of their destiny. And but then they lose to the Jets, like the worst team, 0-13 team. And then it's also ugly because the Jets won. So the Jets are now not the 101 for the NFL draft, so they do not get their pick of the litter. And so both teams, broke expectations and hurt themselves, in the with their actions. So something that shouldn't have happened either way, and they both hurt themselves. So that was pretty ugly.
Yeah, I mean, I know so many people that bet they bet the money line on that Rams game. It was a lock, it was free money pretty much, everyone said, so of course, the Rams probably play their worst game of the season on both sides of the ball. And the Jets, Sam Darnold actually looked good out there during that game. I can't even put that into words, man, because it's like the one thing you didn't think was going to happen was the Rams with that lights out defense going up against the Jets with an offense that, can't score on anybody. You thought it was pretty much game, set, match. But, now the newest thing on Twitter going around is, Jacksonville's going to beat Chicago this week, because they can't they can't have nice things. They're going to give it back to the Jets for the final game of the season, and they'll end up with that second pick again, and the Jets will end up with the first pick, which is what they've worked so hard for throughout the season. So, Jacksonville is going to be a very interesting watch for the last two games, just because they have to do what they've been doing since week one. They won week one and then just decided they were going to lose the rest of the season. So we'll have our eyes open to see if they actually can pull it off, lose 15 straight and get the number one pick and bring Trevor Lawrence down there to throw to DJ Chark and have James Robinson in the backfield and maybe pick up some other weapons throughout the free agency period and during the draft. So, all right, that's our good, our bad, and our ugly. Unfortunately, or fortunately, these guys, cost you maybe the week or brought you into a championship. So we'll be doing this again next week when we talk about the guys that probably won people championships and the guys that cost people championships. So that'll be a good one next week. So let's roll right into what we saw on the timeline. So this first one is from friend of the show, Larry Monkey at FF Larry Monkey. The commish forgot to reseed the week 15 matchups per bylaws. What do you do? And his choices are let it ride as is and stick to the bylaws. So, Bill, I'm going to let you go first. I actually responded to this, so I'll repeat my response after you're done.
Yeah, this one's pretty easy for me. It's you got to do what's in the bylaws. It's not like anything changed. There's it's just the matchups were different, and maybe a team played a player differently because of that. But it's kind of on everyone to be aware of what the settings are for the league. And so, I mean, yeah, it's a mess up by the commish, but when all said and done, you got to follow those rules. You don't just say, "Oh, messed up. We got to live with it and let's move on," because then that sets a precedent for another, for you not following the rules when you're supposed to.
All right. So my response was, if someone calls it out before the games start, then yeah, you obviously have to reseed, put it, even if it's, an hour before the games start, reseed it and do what the bylaws say. But if the games are played and maybe somebody who lost the game based on the matchups that were in front of them realize, oh, this is in the bylaws and I'm going to win now because I play this other person. I don't think that's right either. Now, I agree with you, Bill. I think, like, obviously you need to know what's going on in your leagues. You need to be up to date on your bylaws, and the commissioner of the league definitely needs to be kind of on top of that and say, hey, we're reseeding. This is what it is. But, it almost seems like it could be a get out of jail free card for somebody who lost the game based on not having the reseeding happen, read the bylaws, realize that, get it switched, and then win a week. So I know you're a lot of times you're in that commissioner mindset because you commission so many leagues, and I only commission one, so a lot of times I'm coming from the player mindset, and I'm kind of like, hey, like if I beat you and none of the four teams or the commissioner realized that this thing needed to be reseeded, we shouldn't be reseeding after the fact, after the games are played, after the final scores are put in, and you know, kind of how I feel. So it's kind of like a little from column A and a little from column B in my case. But
Yeah, I mean, it sucks as the player if you lose, right, because of this rule change. It's one of those things that's just an unfortunate situation in my opinion, but I get it. Like as a player, it would not feel right. It would definitely suck because if that person was aware of that beforehand and then didn't say it until afterwards because they wanted to see if they were going to win or not and see if anybody else brought it up. But you can't really, I guess, I can't really hold them put that on them that's what they're doing. You know what I mean? You can't think of the worst of somebody. So, I guess you can't, but the point being is just as the rules are the rules and it sucks and, it sucks for the people that would have ended up losing. But, yeah, it's just a shitty situation.
Yeah. And listen, and Bill knows this, firsthand. Being a commissioner is a tough freaking job. So make sure you're built for it before you decide to do it, because if you're not built for it, things like this happen, and then you put yourself in some real crappy situations where you're now trying to figure out a situation kind of like this. Someone comes up and says, oh, well, you were supposed to reseed, and someone else is saying, yeah, well, it's too late now. We played the games and I won. And I'm not going to lose because you forgot to do your job. So it's just, and again, this is why maybe slide your commissioner a 6-pack at the end of the season, just because situations like this do arise and they have to make tough decisions on whether they have to crush one person's dreams or the other. So, that's my Christmas Eve, good deed of the day. Slip your commissioner a 6-pack. All right, that was a good one. And we're going to go right now to Zach Freed at Fantasy 15. Do you split the pot or play for keeps? Playing in the championship in a league with $720 for first place, $360 for second. Other manager asked me if I wanted to split it $540 each. What's the move? And there's two choices: go big or go home, or play it safe and split it. So I think I have an unpopular opinion about this, and I'm fine being on maybe the wrong side of history here. I play it out. I don't split pots unless someone comes to me, and I actually heard someone say this today, and I thought they brought up a really good point on another pod. If someone maybe comes up to you and says, hey, like COVID happened, I lost my job, it would be really nice to maybe have $500 in my pocket for the holiday season. All right, like I can get you saying, hey, my friendship with this person, or this person I really respect, I'd rather have them maybe have a little bit happier for Christmas than go for the win, quote unquote. But barring a situation like that, I go for it. And the reason why I go for it is because, and I know a lot of people will not agree with me on this, I almost liken it to collusion. Like I'm pulling another team off to the side, or another team is pulling me off to the side and saying, "Hey, like, we can both win here. I'm going to do a little something for you. You're going to do a little something for me, and we're both going to make out." And I don't, I'm not about collusion in any form. And to me, this is kind of like collusion. So I'm gonna play the pot guy. Like, hey, if I win, I win the big money, and if I lose, the better team won, and I take the second place purse, and I go with those winnings, and come back next season and try to win it. What's your opinion on this, Bill?
Yeah, I don't think I'm quite where you are, where I would think that's sort of collusion. I think that's just kind of like, it depends. Like if it's somebody I know well or not. So if it's somebody I know well that says, hey, you just want to split the pot and we're still playing for the championship, that's what you're really playing this game for. The money is just a bonus. Then I really don't care what you do with the money personally. Like, I don't think that that's what you're playing for. Like, I mean, it is and it isn't, I guess, but that's not the big prize in my opinion. So I'm okay with anybody doing whatever the hell they want with the money. And that's kind of how I view it. And that's why I don't kind of view it as collusion, just because there's nothing affecting the gameplay. Because if you're playing for the championship, that's what you're playing for. And so it's all perspective. And so I have no problem with that. And if it's a friend that wants to do it, I'd be totally fine with it. If it's somebody I don't know personally, I'm probably not going to do it, just because it's like, nah, I don't know you. I'm not doing this as a buddy, like, yeah, sure, we'll just do it so we're both happy kind of thing. So that's kind of where I stand with that.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying. Like, I don't think there's any flaws in your logic with that. I don't know. It's a weird. I think it's a weird thing with me, and I know it's an unpopular opinion, and that's why I kind of prefaced it by saying I know it's an unpopular opinion, because there are probably plenty of people listening to this right now and kind of saying like, "Josh, you're an idiot, man. It's nothing like collusion." But in my mind, I kind of liken the two things, because if I did something similar in week 7, you know, I think that people would, and we even hear it sometimes where, we hear teams are like losing games on purpose to affect who they play in the playoffs, or affect another team's playoff seeding and all that kind of stuff. So I understand what you're saying too. We're playing for those bragging rights to say like, I am the champion of this league for this year, and the money is definitely is just kind of a byproduct of being the winner. But yeah, I know it's unpopular. I'm totally fine with I'm totally fine with being unpopular, but just kind of my view on it. But I see your viewpoint too, and I think you make a lot of good points. Like, I think it does depend a lot on, is this a good friend of yours? Is this someone maybe you jumped into a random safe league, and that guy is coming to you and saying, "Hey, how about we chop this pot?" And you're like, "I don't really know who you are, guy," like, or girl. And you just say, "Hey, I'm going to win everything, the championship, the money, the whole kit and caboodle, and we'll see who comes out on top." So I get both sides. I definitely do. So all right, man, let's roll over to Dirty Bird Dynasty at Dirty Bird Dino. Says, "Man, I don't feel good about starting J Rob in Chicago this week. Can I play Deontay Johnson as an alternative? Who would you rather start in the Super Bowl?" And assuming he's saying the Super Bowl of his league, full PPR, 6 point for touchdowns. So, Bill, I'm gonna let you go first. Do you want Deontay Johnson at Indianapolis, or do you want James Robinson at Chicago?
Well, James Robinson has a injury concern, I believe.
Yep.
And so I probably am going to lean Deontay. I mean, Deontay kind of showed that there was a league, I think I needed 22 and a half point PPR points for me to win. and he had pretty much nothing in the first half, and then he almost got enough for me to win in one half. So that just kind of shows you like what he, and that was with only one touchdown. So it just kind of shows you like the accumulation of points that you can get. So, I mean, I'd probably, play it by ear and just see kind of what the reports are through that game and kind of get a feel for it. But I don't think plugging Deontay in is bad. Obviously, a healthy James Robinson, I'm playing over Deontay, but a dinged up one, if I want to just make sure I'm getting points, I'm totally cool putting Deontay in.
Yeah, you bring up some good points. I think, gun to my head, if it sounds like, according to the coaching staff, that James Robinson's not going to practice at all this week. They just want to rest him to try to get him ready for Chicago. If he plays, I think I'm playing him. And I mean, we've been a pro Deontay podcast since the beginning, so this is no disrespect to Deontay, but the Pittsburgh offense just like scares the hell out of me, man. They've been so weird for a month to 5 weeks. I mean, they almost lost to Dallas, and they didn't put up a ton of points. And Dallas, I mean, everyone burns Dallas's defense. They've had their issues against, especially these last 3 games. Against the Bills and against the Bengals of all teams, and it worries me on that aspect. And I think James Robinson, if they're resting him all week and they're sending him out there, Chicago's defense actually hasn't been as scary as they were at the beginning of the season. They've kind of been giving it up a little bit. It seems like they've loosened up since Mitch Trubisky's came out there and kind of just decided to sling the ball all over the yard. So I think I would go. With James Robinson, but obviously, if he's if they're talking on Friday and Saturday that he's not looking good, he's going to get limited snaps, something like that, I think you can roll right over to Deontay and be very happy that you have someone like that you can fit right in. So, all right. I hope that helps, Dirty Bird. We're going to move over to Justin, right at Justin_14P. So Kittle is active this week. We playing him, right? So, all right. If he's healthy, we playing him, right? We playing Kittle?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, he's one of the one players I feel okay coming off an injury. It just seems like if they play him, they know they're getting George Kittle. And so that's one of those things where you got to put him in unless you have like some other tight end that's up there. And I'm trying to think of like, it might only be if I had Waller, or Kelsey. I mean, those are really the only guys. And then I had some incredible flex. That'd be the only time that I wouldn't probably play Kittle. I just got to pretend like he's been playing all season at this point if they put him in.
And I'm with you 100%. I mean, didn't we see this earlier on in the season where Kittle got hurt for 2 or 3 weeks and he came back and we were like unsure if we should start him or not because he's just coming off the injury, and he went bananas. I think that was that game against the Eagles. He just went nuts and scored a whole bunch of points. And I'm with you. If the 49ers, after this extended time that Kittle's been out with injury, decide that week 16 he's ready to go, I think it's because he's ready to go. It's not that they're trotting him out there at 40% or 50%. They're trotting him out there at 80% minimum, and it's probably somewhere closer to 90 to 95%. So, yeah, if they say George Kittle's playing today, okay, cool. I'm putting him out there, and I agree with you. I think Kelsey and Waller are the only two tight ends that I start above him. And I mean, I better have a hell of a flex to even think about, sitting Kittle because like why would you sit him if the 49ers decide to play him?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think he's an automatic. So I'm pretty much. I actually have that in a league where I have to make that decision, and I guess I guess it makes it easy. I guess the answer we've had a long-winded answer to something that we probably could have said in 10 words. I mean, it's just I mean, it's good to talk it out, but for sure, it's like it seems like it's such an obvious answer now that kind of wrap my brain around it.
Yeah, but you know what? I think it is good to talk it out because we get stuck in these situations all the time where it is a really good elite player is coming off of injury and we're not sure how to handle it. Julio Jones comes back from injury and we're like, do we play him? Do we not play him? We hear the dreaded limited snaps and then we really get worried. It happened last week with Keenan Allen. Is Keenan Allen going to play? Yeah, he's going to play. He's yelling into the camera, don't sit me fantasy players. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, like we're going to start him. And then he kind of we have to make these decisions all the time, and a lot of times we're unsure which direction we want to go in because it's like, all right, like if I play this guy and he's a dud, especially now in championship week, that's a championship. We just talked about this in our last question. Like we're playing for first, like we're playing to be the person that represents the league as champion for the next year. So, the decisions get a lot more impactful because you don't have another week to make up the game that you messed up this week. So, but you know what? While we're here, why don't we play a little game? And we're going to play the George Kittle or blank game. So I'm going to name some guys, and I just want you to tell me: is it going to be? And I'm assuming this is a flex situation. So you can let me know what you think. George Kittle or Robert Woods?
I'm probably going in just a PPR.
PPR.
No premium. Okay.
No premium.
Yeah, I'm probably still going Kittle.
I agree with you. I think I'd go Kittle as well. Let's see. I'm trying to look through some names here. I was going to say Keenan Allen, but if he's still hurt, I mean, that's an easy one because we thought he could play last week, and we all got burned by that. Here's a good one.
So we could go with the actual A-Rob that's in the game. That's not the actual Robinson. I'm going A-Rob over him.
Okay. Here's a good one, and I'm going to preface this. George Kittle or Tony Pollard if Zeke doesn't play.
And they play Philly.
PPR.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm probably gonna go Kittle, but that's a tough one for sure. Yeah, I mean that is a tougher one than I expected, but I think this is where, and this could be just a comfort bias, where like you just feel comfortable playing like the guy that you've seen do well for a long period of time.
Right.
I've had these conversations recently, like in some chats and some podcasts where, starting your big name players, or do you pick somebody who's got like an incredible matchup, it's or has a great opportunity in a position. And it's really hard when your brain tells you that these big name players are they do well for you so much, but then maybe they have a bad matchup, and then you have some other guy who you haven't seen do anything all year, but he just landed into a great situation. Do you have the the internal strength to make that decision to put a player in that that you could very easily regret if it blows up in your face? And that's the situation you're presenting, is exactly that. And so, I mean, I'd probably have to hear that Kittle has practiced, through the whole time, for me to feel comfortable in starting him over Pollard. But I'd have to know that also that Zeke is definitely not playing.
Right. And I agree with everything you said. I think I would go Kittle, but not only do I have Tony Pollard on my championship team, and he was my highest scoring player last week. I'm also a Dallas Cowboys fan, which I know obviously is going to shade that a little bit. I think Kittle at the end of the day, but man, that would be a tough one. That would be one that I would sweat until Sunday, and I would put Kittle in, and I would just pray that Tony Pollard didn't go off, because I would be mad at myself. But here's one more, since our man Steve Dennis said it would be a short game, and we actually came up with a couple of nail biters. Detroit Lions own Marvin Jones, who has been, by the way, who's been balling out. I didn't put this up here just because he's a Lion. I put this up here because this dude is probably on a few championship teams in flex spots, kind of just winning weeks on his own. So Detroit's own Marvin Jones or George Kittle?
Man, I mean, and all these conversations, and I didn't really take into account that CJ Beathard's probably the guy throwing the ball. So there's another facet that I hadn't really considered, that, our whole conversation, I'm not sure, that probably actually maybe makes it easier for me to pick a different player. So I would probably, if the situation is, I might take Pollard over Kittle because of that. So probably the same thing with Jones, just as long as Stafford's playing, and it sounds like he is. But then we have to take into account that Detroit's coach is being quarantined, so they may not have a play caller. So since he was the old OC, so there's really nobody that's been in those, game planning meetings. So that's kind of a challenge. So I probably go Kittle in that, unless I know that Bevel is going to be back calling plays.
And actually, on another pod I was listening to, and I listen to too many pods, so I can never give people credit for the funny stuff they say, but someone said they should use the Peyton Manning robot that he uses in those Tide commercials, and just have all of the quarantine coaches in different war rooms, and they just can communicate with the team via the little rolling robot and call plays.
That's funny.
And send them out. I thought that was pretty funny. I was like, yeah, that would be a really good idea, actually. Just have a little robot rolling down the sideline. But yeah, that's such an interesting situation with the Lions and their coaching staff. And, this sounds like they might be missing like half of their coaching staff due to the fact that they're close contacts, and they, at least one person obviously has COVID, and it's kind of nutty. It's like, wow, what do you do? Who's calling plays? Who's
And Stafford said he can call the plays once they get out there, but the problem is, just them picking the proper packages to come in to run the plays. And so he's not going to be, somebody's got to be able to even do that. And he's like, because he can easily look at what the defense is giving him at this point in time in his career and just make decisions off of that. So it's it'd be fun to see him just call the whole game, just say, F it, let's do it. Let's see what happens. And it'd be a shit show, but it'd be a fun shit show.
I mean, look, it's 2020. We've seen all kinds of crazy stuff happen. We've seen the Broncos play a game without a quarterback. I mean, why don't we let Matt Stafford just call the whole game? The kicker and the punter can take the week off because you know Matt Stafford. He's going for it on every fourth down. So those two guys could take the week off and just have a cold one and just talk about the good old days while Stafford is going for it on 4th and 17 and probably hitting Marvin Jones for a 22-yard reception or something like that. But talking about flex and talking about Marvin Jones, Jimmy J here. Thoughts on the flex? Mike Evans, Marvin Jones, J.K. Dobbins. those are three really good guys. That's a tough one. You have a good team if these are your flex considerations.
Do you know who Baltimore plays?
No, but let me look that up real quick.
Okay, I know that Tampa and Detroit play each other.
Right.
So I'm probably going Mike Evans over Marvin Jones just because Tampa's defense. And, I think that's just – but JK, I mean, it's nice that basically they're not playing Ingram, I believe, is the case.
Right.
So it's just down to him and Gus. And so it'll be – that's a tough one.
So Baltimore is playing the New York Football Giants.
Okay, I'm probably going – damn, that is a tough one. I probably lean Dobbins here.
Okay. I'm sorry, Jimmy J. We're not gonna agree here. The problem is that all three of these guys are
pick
really
the third one.
Yeah, that's probably where you're going with this. But I would actually go with Marvin Jones. He's just hot right now. He's killing it. I mean, let's face it. Detroit is probably going to be playing from behind in a lot of this game, so there's going to be passes galore, and it seems like Marvin Jones is the guy that Stafford looks for first in this situation or in these situations. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Marvin Jones, and Bill went with J.K. Dobbins. So, yeah, maybe Mike Evans is the right answer.
But good luck regardless, man. That's looks like a good team starting A.J. Brown and Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones and Derrick Henry. So should be a fun one for you. Good luck.
Yeah, you might be able to start me at flex and still win with those guys you got out there. So that's a damn good team now. So we're gonna move now to Zach Stevens at Zach DNVR at Zach Stevens DNVR. Excuse me. Drew Lock said, "If we get another year for this offense, the sky's the limit for us as a young team." So, Bill, you pose an interesting question here. What is the ceiling of this offense if all of the pieces return? So, I mean, I think we're pretty confident in the pieces, and this is what I'm going to say. Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay, even the secondary receiving options, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler, Deshaun Hamilton to a small extent. And then obviously at tight end, they have Noah Fant. So they have guys. The biggest question, and this is a conversation you and I have had on previous episodes, is what is the ceiling for Drew Lock? I think what you believe the ceiling for Drew Lock is what the ceiling for this offense is. If the ceiling for Drew Lock, in your opinion, is a top 20 quarterback, and when I say top 20, we're talking about like probably more 16 through 20, they're capped. They don't, they'll be okay, but they're not going to be, an elite offense. But if you believe that Drew Lock has, let's say, 8 to 10 upside, or even 8 to 12 upside, then I think this is going to be a really freaking good offense. So I think it all depends on Drew Lock. I mean, that's my opinion on it. What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, you have to consider Lock, and then you also have to consider just the offense in general. Like, is it going to be where they're running a ton of plays and it's going to be high volume, or is it going to be a offense that's kind of capped just based on the amount of plays that they, are executing per game. So I'm not sure like that I ever see them being like, I think that there's probably 8 offenses in the NFL that will always be higher volume than them, like automatically. And that's like, so even if Locke is a top 10 quarterback, I don't think that their offense will ever get above that consistently with what's, with the situation as it is. Now, I don't believe that he is that. So that basically limits him. I think the offense, like that offense isn't great right now overall. I think they're in the bottom third of the NFL. So, like, I think 9 out of 14 games or something, whatever it was, they've scored 21 points or less. So it's not like they're showing well this year. And a lot of the offense was in garbage time. So there's just a lot of things that are working against them this year. Now, obviously they can improve. And I mean, that's definitely something that can happen. I know he's trying to buy another year for himself by making comments like this, but and he might get it. It'll be interesting to see, but I don't see them being more than like a mid-tier offense.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's really all dependent on Drew Lock, and I also think, while I don't think they're going to fire their head coach this season, I think this would be a good spot for one of these offensive-minded OCs that are probably going to get a head coaching job to go into. I mean, if you got like Brian Daboll from Buffalo to work with Drew Lock and maybe work some of the same magic with Drew Lock that he's worked with Josh Allen and run that offense, I mean, we've seen what he's done with Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley and John Brown. And I mean, they look good out there. And I don't think they have the running backs that Denver does. And I think they have a better tight end. So it would be interesting to see if they did get a guy like that, which I don't think they will. I think they bring Vic Fangio back for another year. It sounds like from all the beat reporters, they want to run this back one more year and just hope that everyone stays healthy for the whole season to really get a gauge on whether Drew Lock is the guy for this offense. But I think he's the main factor here. If he can be a top 12 guy, I think the offense has a chance to be pretty good. But if he's QB 20, they're not going to be good. I mean, it doesn't matter what the weapons are on that side of the field.
Yeah, and I just looked it up. They're 28th in yards per game and 28th in points per game. So granted, Locke missed some time and all of that, but that's still like, it's not like he's pulling the offense up when he's been back. So that's the concern. But he's young and he has a chance to grow. This season's huge for him. And, even then he might be SOL just because if they go in a different direction, like he's just out of luck. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I think he's maybe being a little, he's blowing a little more sunshine than he ought to, I guess. But if I'm in his position, I guess I am going to be, looking at it from a sunshine way.
Yeah, and it's definitely going to be an interesting offseason because a guy that we've been talking about possibly as the veteran presence to push Drew Lock, Sam Darnold. Now there's reports coming out of New York that if they do pick second, it's not locked up that they're going to take Justin Fields. They could take Penei Sewell and try to build an offensive line around Sam Darnold, especially because he played pretty well in that Rams game. So I mean, you've kind of always seen flashes of brilliance from Sam Darnold, but you've never seen it kind of strung out in an extended way. But if he stays in New York, then that's a guy that I've heard rumored as someone that uh, John Elway would maybe trade a pick for to bring in and kind of push Drew Lock, or maybe even take over the position from Drew Lock. So it'll be interesting to see what direction they go in, if they go with an older vet. At one point Sam Bradford's name was being bounced around there. I don't think that would happen, but you never know. It's the NFL. Things can happen. But yeah, that's going to be an interesting spot to watch and see what they do with Drew Lock and how they handle him. And I think free agency and the draft is going to go towards kind of making that picture a little bit clearer. So let's move on here to the Pharaoh Fantasy at DTC_Izzy E. He said, and he was actually responding to another tweet by Kane Fussell at Devi_Kane. Do you believe that a trade agreed to in a chat means it should go through in the league? And his response was, some people are shysters. I will never, ever agree to text offer. I always say, send it over and I'll take a look. I've had too many instances where I agree and then they say, okay, let me think about it. TF you mean? And I think we all know what the TF means. This is so interesting, and I've actually seen a lot of tweets about this in the last few days, I guess, with, people being in the playoffs and making it to championship games. If you don't have a trade deadline, there are a lot of trades being talked about. And, hey, would you be willing to trade player X? Oh, yeah, I think so. Oh, would you take, this player or these picks or a player in picks? And you're kind of chatting about it before you just send them a cold offer. What are your thoughts on this, Bill? If it's there in writing, is it legal?
I mean, it's not legal, but it's something that you got to be really careful as a team that you don't fall into that where you burn bridges with other, league members because you him and haw about something that you've discussed and basically agreed upon in chat, and then you go, oh, let me think about it. I mean, if you start out the conversation saying, hey, I'm just feeling I'm dipping my toe in to see what your thoughts are, and we kind of can hash something out, and I'm gonna, that's something I'm gonna consider because I'm talking to other people or whatever like that. I'm cool with it, just so I can see kind of where you are with evaluation. Like, as long as you're upfront about that, I'm cool with it. But if you don't present that up front and then you're kind of making it sound as though you want to make a trade and you're just hashing it out with that one league mate, and then you kind of back off, that's bad form. And I think that you're going to burn bridges that way. And, that's just going to hurt you in the long term. So I agree with Izzy. I think that, I think we've all experienced that at some point in time. And especially if you play in a lot of leagues, like there's always, and I think maybe even early on, I may have done that. I can't recall of anything, but I'm sure there's been a time where I'm like, all right, let me think about this. I'm not 100% sold on it, but but I'm not going to get to the point where I say I agree with a trade and then back out like that. Like, ultimately, like, my word's my bond. That's how I've always looked at it. And so if I'm not going to be that guy that backs out. And if I have to take a hit and I'm not super stoked about the trade, I'm in tough shit because, I already committed.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I definitely do chat sometimes about trades and DMs and GroupMe or whatever platform we're using to communicate in, and or someone may come to me and say, hey, are you willing to trade player X? And my response is, I'm willing to trade anybody at the right price. Like, I'm not committed to anybody so much that I wouldn't give them up, but the price has to be right. And we could talk back and forth. And I'm like you, Bill. If we say, hey, I'm going to trade player A, and you're going to trade me player B or this package or whatever, and I say, okay, cool, like, yeah, we're going to make this trade. Like, as soon as you send it, I accept it. That's me. That's the way I play. But I never commit. I will always say, hey, if someone says, hey, we talked about it. It seems like you want this. It seems like I want that. I'll be like, all right, man, send it to me and let me take a look at it. I just want to see it out in front of me on my computer screen or on my phone so that I can really take a look at it. And that's what I say, because I don't do this enough, but I think if you're playing smart, if someone reaches out to you, especially in this time of year now where we're talking about playoff teams and we're talking about, the first thing you should be doing is going to the rest of the teams that are still alive in your playoff and saying, hey, do you have any interest in player A? And see what they say. They may be like, yeah, man, like, I'll give you all of this stuff. And maybe the person you've been talking to is like, I'll give you a little bit of this over here. And you can go back to the first person and say, hey, look, like, it's just not worth it to me. Like, and trade that guy right over to the other guy who's in the championship, maybe, because he's going to give you more or give you more assets that you like. I don't do that enough. Usually, if someone reaches out to me or I reach out to somebody, you know, I'm not talking to four other people about the same player. It's usually just me and you. I do it sometimes, but I probably don't do it as much as I should. So that's me. But yeah, I agree with Izzy. Like, I always say, yeah, send it to me and I'll take a look at it, because I've had those instances early on in my fantasy career and my dynasty career. Like, yeah, man, like, let's make this deal. And then they're like, it's almost like you accept it too easily. There must be something wrong with my offer. And then they try to amend it. And then you get into this situation where you're like, wait a minute, I thought we agreed on this deal here. And now all of a sudden you want to change it to be something else. So yeah, I always say, send it to me and I'll take a look at it. But yeah, if you do agree to it, it should be binding, but it's really not binding unless it goes through the system, goes through whatever platform you're using. So, I mean, I've seen this in leagues before where someone says, hey, like, they said right here they were going to accept this deal. I have the screenshots. It's like, yeah, but they changed their mind and they have, the right to. I mean, they shouldn't have agreed to your deal, but they have the right to change it until they hit accept. They have the right to say, maybe it's not enough.
Yeah, it's essentially a verbal agreement. That's not a contract. So, it's one of those things where it just saves you the headache, like, because then you have to go through the process twice. So, send the offer. That's the way that you can get it in writing, and that's pretty much it. Like, there's just been so many people, like, I've heard so many people complain about this year after year after year. And if you've been in this long enough, you've encountered it probably more than one time, and it gets old real quick because you just wasted all this time with somebody thinking that you were in a good faith negotiation. And then, you just need to, if you do start talking, you just need to say, hey, I'm shopping, like, so that people are aware that you're not agreeing to anything at the moment. You're just seeing what's out there.
And Kane was on the Trade Addicts pod with Russ this week, and that was a real good episode. If you haven't heard it yet, definitely go ahead and listen to that. But he brought up a good point too. Like, if this is something you feel real strongly about, like, put it in your bylaws. Like, hey, if you have a screenshot and you have a screenshot of a guy saying, yeah, I accept, and everyone has the same bylaws, that's what it is. Like, then it's legal. But besides that, I mean,
Yeah,
it ain't legal.
I'll never have that in my bylaws. It's just too easy to just keep it as is. And hey, if you burn bridges, that's your fault, not mine.
Exactly. I'm with you like that. I'm with you on that one. So, Bill, that's the end of our story. That's
All right.
that we got to all the questions this week. It was It was a good week. We had a lot of good ones on this Christmas Eve. Thank you to everybody who was watching on YouTube, man. Really appreciate it. Jimmy J with some good questions. Steve Dennis with some good questions. Lindsay Kennedy, as always, doing her thing in the comments. And there were other people in and out. We appreciate you guys. Remember, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that follow, hit that bell so you know when we go live. If you're listening to us on podcast, thank you for that too. It's the holiday season, everyone's busy, so if you spent the last hour listening to us, I mean, that shows commitment, so we're happy about that. And I think I have said everything that I need to say, so Bill, we are out of here.
Late.